Oh, there she is. Hello, everyone. Our podcast. We are doing something new here. We're starting to work with live stream, and um, it's like it's an experiment that I'm playing with because now ultimately all this technology that I have to relearn. No, but I think once I get the nift of it, it'll be a lot better. But right now, unfortunately, it's the beginning. Um, trying to I don't know. I'm trying to bring up my things of Michelle. There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay, you can hear me now. I'm hoping she can hear me now. Anyway, so Michelle is in. You can hear me, okay? And she experienced a lot that many have gone through. But we have to. There are some people who need the what I call encouragement, because comfort is the 7-letter word for encouragement. And sometimes we need to be able to learn something new as part of our confidence. And sometimes when we bring somebody else in who's also had that experience and understands the grief of the loss of a spouse, or a loss of a child, or a loss of a parent, or a loss of a sibling. And Michelle is here tonight to help us understand, or have a better understanding, what it was like to have that loss. And she also is here to tell us how important it is to um, what's the word I want to use? To learn how to be a better comforter for one another. Um, I know for me, my confidence was not the same as my confidence that I give to others. That doesn't mean I'm a less of a comforter. It just means I learned to understand how to be an effective comforter. But I also are continually learning from others who have a different perspective, or a different, what I call light at the end of the tunnel, the hope that we all need and the love that we all need. And I know that, Michelle, can you speak now or are you still on mute? I hope you're not on mute.
Nope, I figured out how to unmute myself. Can you hear me now? Great.
Good. Yes, I can hear you much better. And I hope you've been able to hear me.
I've been able to hear you, yeah, the whole time.
Good. And you're from Hawaii, right?
No, I'm from Portland, Oregon.
Are you from Hawaii?
Portland, Oregon.
Woo! Okay, I got friends that live in that area as well, and friends I know from
Hawaii.
high school and friends that I've known.
I go to Hawaii as often as
I
can.
I want to give you the floor. I want you to be able to share your story, tell us about who you are, and share your story, but share something that will really teach us, inspire us, encourage us, so that we can have a better understanding. And tell us about your book, because I saw that you wrote a book. It looked awesome. And I think you are here to inspire all of us. And that's what we all need. We need people that come not only to teach us and educate us about grief, but people that will encourage us, that will inspire us, and that will motivate us. So the floor is yours. I am going to mute myself because I have a bad habit of interrupting when I hear something that triggers me, and I want to put in something, but I'm trying to get into break that bad habit. And then maybe at the end we can have an answer and discussion. So
I would like that. Yeah,
okay,
I want to be interrupted. I get tired of the sound of my own voice. So, oops, I can't see me now. Am I still on? It says I'm live. I hope I'm still on. Dee, am I still here? This is a new platform for me as well. I'm not used to
it is a new platform for me, and Tony's been trying to encourage me to come on here. So I'm trying to take this off. You're doing
great.
There you go.
Oh, I'm back. I can see myself now. All right. So, gosh, you just left it so wide open. But I love the direction of support and inspire. So I think that in order to tell a little bit about my story, I'll do the underpinning of inspiration. When I was married to my husband, Glenn, in 2016, he died by suicide. And I went on, as most of the people that are listening to this podcast, I would imagine, have had some grief. And you realize it just turns your life in a completely different direction. And the harder you fight it, the harder it is. So once you embrace, not necessarily accept, but just realize, okay, they're gone. The person I'm grieving is no longer here. You can start your healing journey. And I don't believe that our relationship with that person ends. I believe I still have a relationship with my deceased husband. It's just changed, but then again, so have I. And I think we all go through a big change when we are faced with grieving, when we're faced with any big challenges that life can throw at us. And the change that we go through is where we need our comfort, our seven letter word. I love that, D, and our inspiration. And for a long time after Glenn died, I didn't really have any inspiration. All I had was pain. And I did all the wrong things, and although I do, now that I'm a grief educator, I teach that there's no wrong way to grieve, but there is a wrong way if your ultimate goal is healing. And my ultimate goal was to feel better than I did that first year. Mostly I turned to drugs and alcohol and was very irresponsible. And guess what? I got sick. Big surprise, right? So after that first year, I found a really good therapist and I began to bring some health habits into my life. And this is where I began to connect with some inspiration right around the end of the first year. And the timing doesn't mean anything. It might be the first month for some people, it might be a decade for some people. But after I finally connected with the importance of getting healthy in order to live anything but a painful life, the idea of living a joyful life at that time was far beyond any idea that I had. I just wanted to not be miserable all the time. And I found meditation, mantra meditation specifically through the Chopra Center. They teach primordial sound meditation. And I really started leaning into my faith, spirituality, and friends and other grievers. And what I found is that we need other grievers to be on our path, because our friends and our family who aren't going through the same loss, our coworkers, they expect that once you've gotten over it, and in their mind that might be weeks or months, that you're going to get back to the same person you were. And the thing is, you were probably not, because you're changed by your loss. And this change doesn't have to be bad. The pain is bad, the loss is bad, but the new you, and this is where inspiration comes in, the new you can be a better version of yourself. And you can get there by realizing that what's important, right? I think that when we go through a major trauma or tragedy in our lives, that sometimes we do some reevaluating. And that's certainly what I did. Out with the unimportant, in with the important. My first experience during this time of realizing that my loss could have meaning to other people was about 9 months after Glenn died. A good friend of mine's husband also died by suicide. And at the time, my first response was, I can't talk to her. I can't talk about this. There's nothing I can do. What ended up happening was I did call her at the request of a mutual friend. I did call her. And even though I was only 9 months into my journey, I was able to help her by just listening and just existing. The fact that I was 9 months further along after my husband died by suicide than she was gave her hope. So you never know who you might be able to help or comfort or inspire, even when you're in one of the worst places that you can be. So how did I heal? And this is where I hope I'm going to help you be motivated and help inspire you. First, the meditation, like I mentioned before. And then I started really focusing on self-care. And by self-care, I don't necessarily mean going to the spa or whatever comes to mind. Self-care means really finding out who am I, and what do I need to follow my soul direction, my path that was set out that I was set on this earth to follow. How can I inspire and support and comfort others from my heart? So self-care was finding out who I am, doing a lot of self-inquiry. One of my main ways that I did that ended up becoming a book was by writing. And I recommend writing to anyone who's dealing with any type of challenge or struggle. You can write it doesn't have to be written for a book someday. It can be journaling. It's like having a therapist around 24/7. You could just onto the page, get it out, feel better, release some of there's a lot of energy that gets built up when we're hurting, and you need to get that pain out. So writing is one of the best ways to do it. And after a year after Glenn died, on the actual 1 year anniversary of his death, I was in Hawaii. I wasn't, I didn't live there, but I was there spreading his ashes. And on my way back to the little condo I had rented from that ceremony that I'd done, I had an inspiration that I can only offer up to spirit or God. I literally heard words saying, "You need to write a book to help others." And that was in 2017, and this is 2023, and I've just published 2 books, actually. Oops, I'm mirrored over here. So my 2 books here: Surviving Spouse or Partner Suicide Loss, A Mindful Guide to Your Journey Through Grief. And then once I finished this one, I had another inspiration, and that was to write a companion book. And the companion book is literally for companions of people who are suffering this loss, supporting a survivor, spouse, or partner suicide loss, a mindful guide for co-journeying through grief. The reason that this book came out or was inspired is, and I'm sure a lot of you have had this same sort of situation, if you are in the grieving community, we don't necessarily know how to support our grievers. And if you're the griever, in my case as spouse, the primary mourner, people around me wanted me to just be better, or they wanted me to not be grieving, or they wanted me to be different than I was, or they said terrible things that made me feel worse. And so the second book that I wrote is to educate those people so they can have a more successful journey through grief, and they can support their survivor of suicide loss more successfully. I moderate grief groups now, and one of the things that I see when I'm working with, and also work with grief clients through coaching, one of the things that I see that is so heartbreaking to me is relationships that are ruined or harmed by the fact that the griever and the supporter of the griever aren't connecting anymore. Maybe they used to connect by doing a certain activity together, but the griever can no longer do that activity because they're just not ready. They're in grief. They're not feeling well. And there are so many broken relationships that are from the fallout of grieving together. It's heartbreaking. And I know that if people were simply more educated, these are friendships, these are family members, brothers, sisters, parents, children. If everyone just learned grief is a normal thing, it's not a disease, it's a process we go through when we're in loss. And there are ways to support, but we don't know how. And that's what happens to these relationships. It's very heartbreaking. So that's where the second book came from. And I think that if people read these books, I know people are already reading them, they came out January of 2023, that they're helping people. They're helping people by opening their hearts to compassion and understanding more that grief is a process that cannot be rushed. No matter how much you want your friend back, if they went through a deep grieving episode, it might not be for a while. They may not be texting you back, and that might be frustrating, but how about you just keep trying for a while? And the other thing I talk about a lot is making sure that the supporters of grievers get their own help. Sometimes when we're grieving together, we're both so injured that we're not able to support each other. So finding your own therapist, that kind of thing, your own grief support group. And there are a lot of grief support groups out there, especially, one that comes to mind is called Soaring Spirits, and they have a group for supporters of people who lost their spouses and partners. So you can get that help. After I started the meditation journey that I told you about a year after Glenn died, I went further into learning, and I got my grief educator certification, because for me, learning about grief is one way to heal. I really like to learn, and that's part of the reason I wrote that book. Hi, Dee, are you back with me? I felt so lonely. I
Yeah,
couldn't see you.
yeah, I know. I've been listening to you and everything you've been saying, and I'm here nodding my head, and a lot of what you're saying is making so much sense. There's another support group. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're called Grief Share.
I've
And
not heard of them, but I will
Grief
look into
Share
that.
is a
Thank you.
Grief Share is a Christian support group. So no matter what type of loss you have, it all comes to that. But I was listening to what you were saying, that grievers and grievers that support. I think the support is more stronger once you pass the 1 year, because you're still, in a sense, because especially if your spouse had committed suicide, your brain is still in shock, your brain is still numb and foggy, and your body still has not come to. It's like after 2 years, I think with me, I didn't lose a spouse, I lost my son, but after 2 or 3 years, the overwhelming grief came, because the first year my brain was still fogged, still, my body was still in shock,
Mm-hmm.
and for something like that, I would, that makes sense what you're saying, that it's really hard for one griever to help support another griever, and that you should get separate therapies, so maybe even separate support group,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
because it's like you were saying, she's like lost her husband 9 months after you lost yours. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like the grievers were, in a sense, clashing. You wanted to be there for her. You wanted to be a comfort for her. But at the same time, you were not quite sure, because you were still grieving.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. Yeah.
But it's now, how many years has it been since your husband passed away?
It'll be 7 next month.
7. So did you find after 3 years that the grief not only became overwhelming, or did you find the way? See, with me, I changed my mindset. I was still grieving for my son, but I changed my mindset, and I've had to find a way to comfort myself, because I really wasn't getting much of it from family or friends, or even church members, church friends. So I had to find a way to comfort myself. But once I learned to comfort myself, it made it so much easier to be there for others. So did you find that also, that maybe it took a couple of years before
Yeah,
you
I
know what you
agree
do?
with what you're saying. That first year, I was so numb, and I was trying to numb myself too. Which, but yeah, I think for some people, and I do think it's different for everyone. I don't think we can say, well, at the 1 year mark, you can expect this. But I do feel, I agree with you that after that first year, things got a little more clear about the grieving process. But I still, even, it wasn't until I took the grief educator course, and that was in 2021, that I fully understood what I'd gone through and what I was continuing to go through. And so even 4 or 5, 5 years out, I was still going through the grief journey. I mean, I think you do forever. I'm,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, but that's
But you
when
can
I was ready
change,
to really write about it.
but it's a matter of changing our mindset. We can still grieve for our loved one, but what can we
Mm-hmm.
do with that grief to turn it around, so that we can do and be something positive for someone else? not just for
Right.
ourselves, but also to share that change,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
Um,
and for me, it was the self-care that I was talking about, being
yes,
figuring out a way to be true to yourself,
yes,
and education for me, just learning more and more and more about grief, reading books like Finding Meaning by David Kessler,
yes,
um,
yes,
getting through What You Can Never Get Over. There's so many books, and now
yeah,
my two books, that can be really helpful to make it, to help you understand that you're not alone, that there's
right,
a very similar process people go through with these losses, and you feel like you're the only person that's ever felt as bad as you feel when you go through this loss. But once you realize that you're grieving, even though you may not know people, that you still have a community that you're grieving
yeah,
with, you just have to find them. That's one
yes.
of the beautiful things about the internet is, all these grief groups online now, you can find people that are, I mean, all over the world.
And Michelle, you'd be surprised how many people that's even within the Global Grief Network, coaches who also have had husbands, loss of husbands through suicide as well, or even loss of husband by other means. But that's another way to also start a support group through our network is Jenny Belton. She lost her husband to suicide, and
Mm.
and she had children, 3 children. Do you have children? Did you have
Well,
children?
this was yes, and we were married late. We merged our two. We were both divorced, and so I had three
Oh,
children, and he had three children, but we didn't have any children between us. But
okay.
there were six kids when he died. They were almost all teenagers. Yeah, there was.
Did his kids stay with you?
I'm still in touch with them, but at the time, it was pretty hard because their mom needed them to be with her. Because,
Yes,
yeah,
yes. And I hope they were able to also find comfort and support. Um,
they're they're all finding their way, but it's, I mean,
I'm
14,
doing a
15
workshop
years
tomorrow.
old.
Yeah, I'm doing a workshop
Right.
tomorrow on when children grieve. So that may be something that would be good for that whole blonde family to listen
Yeah,
to because there was so many good tips and stuff like that, especially when they're turning teenagers, because that's when that's when they really hide their grief, and then they
yeah,
turn into doing other stuff as a result of their grief. So,
yeah.
but
I just tell them I love them and I'm here for them, and hopefully, they're all kind of grown now. The youngest is 20,
oh
so
wow, they are
we,
grown.
yeah, and the oldest just turned 27. So it's pretty hard, when you're a parent and you have a kid in those age groups, to say you need to go to therapy and grieve your father. So I know they'll find their way
Yes,
eventually.
and children do grieve in their own way. They grieve totally different from parents or
They
from
do.
the adults. So you have to allow them to and give them the permission to grieve and let them grieve. And
Yes.
then when they're ready, they will come to you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Did you
remember,
use that in your book as well as especially when you're like a blended family, or even if you weren't a blended family? Did you also put that in your book as well as how to?
yeah, I talked a little bit about children and how they grieve, but because I wrote the book very specifically to spouses and
Spouses, yeah.
partners, I didn't deal with that a lot. And partly because I just think there's people who are much more educated about that than I am.
Mm,
And so there's a little bit of guidance in there about that, but that was not the focus of the book. It's definitely just, what do you do when your spouse or partner dies by suicide? But I did mention, the children might be acting in a way that you just can't believe. Like they're acting fine. They want to go to their friends and have a normal life like 2 days later, and you can't, so I did talk about that a little bit because
Yeah.
it is a very, very different process children go
Oh,
through
yes.
than
Oh,
adults go
yes.
through with the grief process. So,
Yeah. Totally
and
different.
it's shocking. I mean, for adults who are grieving, it can be very shocking to see children acting normal or not acting normal, whatever the child's doing. And it's heartbreaking because there's nothing you can do for the child. You can't grieve for them. This is their journey now. I mean, you can certainly comfort them, of course, but we all want to protect our children from all pain. But when something like this happens, you have to realize that this is their life and they have to go through the process.
Yes.
And it's hard and heartbreaking because you just want to save them from it.
Yes. And you're not really sure at what point where their grief is at. Because they made it like 2 days later want to run to be play with their friends. But one of the things I studied about, that's their way of trying to process,
Mm-hmm.
that grief. So,
Yeah.
but so I was glad to hear that not only did you write a book on your story, but you also wrote a book to help people. So that really is wonderful because the book I'm trying to finish is a combination. I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
prevent two different books, but it's a combination. And because you want to tell your story, but you're telling the story for a reason to help
Right.
educate, and then let them work. I think what I'm going to do at the end of the book is put it like a workbook, combine it so that they
Yeah.
can, because we all grieve differently. Men grieve differently than women. And I keep saying,
Mm-hmm.
like I think I told Jenny, I said, God created us women for a reason. and and he created our emotions and our feelings for a reason. And what we as women go through is different than what men go through. But I've known men to grieve silently. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to express it. They're afraid of like most people are afraid of the judgment and the criticism. They were taught not to cry because big boys don't cry, So it's 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 just not educating the woman, because I think the women get it faster than men do. It's in a
Yeah.
sense
We're more
educating
open to
men.
our emotions. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the men
Yeah.
that, because the way society has taught all of us, it's the
Yeah.
men that we need to find a way to. I even find it, how am I going to say this? So at my church, I noticed a lot of the husbands have stopped coming to church. And that's one of the things that we are praying is for those husbands, because something happened for them to break that relationship with their church family. So there's grief on that part because they're not
Sure. Yeah.
back. So it's a matter of trying to find out why and how to help them. Because broken relationships, however the way it is also grief. Going through a divorce as you two did, that's also grief.
Yeah.
And trying to, you want them to grieve, but at the same time, you don't want to force religion or anything like that on them. Because I don't know why men seem to like put the wall up and distance themselves from even religion. And
Well,
yeah,
I think it's what you were saying, Dee. I think it's the fact that they were raised not to be in touch with their emotions. Just do. Don't feel. And so then we ask them to come to church, which is, a place of the heart, a place where we get in touch with God and with feeling. And I think that it's, probably a lot of work. Like all of a sudden they're facing childhood trauma they never talked about, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And
Or they might have
yeah.
even had to deal with grief on their own as a child, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's a
Don't
there's a,
cry, go play, you'll be fine.
yes, yes. Or we'll replace the puppy when, you know. But and people don't realize you may replace the puppy, but the relationship that child had with the first puppy is not going to be the same kind of relationship they're going to have with the second puppy. And that's the same way, in a way, the way we all relate with each other, even with our spouses or friends or whoever it may be. The way we relate to each other is different. So when there's a loss, as like in a death or even broken relationships, that grief is still overwhelming because this was somebody you loved very much, somebody you cared about very much, somebody you had I'm going to say this in air quotes, like an intimate relationship with, may not be like a man and woman, but somebody that if you were best friends or something like that, and then suddenly they're gone. That's still grief. And
Yeah,
that's still
absolutely.
pain that you're having to deal with, that loss. So as a wife, so you went through divorce, losing the first husband. That was your grief you had to deal with that broken relationship. And then he was
Yeah.
this wonderful man that came into your life, that loved you, that treated you like good, that probably spoiled you. And all of a sudden, boom, and you're in shock. You don't know what happened. And that kind of grief is a much deeper grief because that relationship with your spouse is different than the relationship you would have with your best friend or with your child or with your parents. And I've never been married, but I've had broken relationships. And I know even with that, it still hurt. I had one guy I met in college. I was madly in love with him. And I think there was a point that we thought we were going to get married. And all suddenly, that relationship was broken. And here it is over, oh my God, over 30 years. And in a sense, I'm still grieving for that loss for him. But now he's remarried and he has children, you know? And I can't, and I won't get into that relationship if he's married and he's happily married and he has children. I let him be. I don't want to have a conversation with him because I know what my heart feels. But I still keep his pictures up on my wall. I still think of him, but I know I cannot think of him as that relationship. I want to think of him as that friend that I had a wonderful time with, that we did wonderful things together. And so I had to change my mindset. Mike was in my life for a reason for that time. And although I lost that relationship, I had to take the joy that I had in that relationship and turn it around and say, he is my friend now. I cannot think of that kind of relationship. And although I feel heartbreak that we no longer have that heart relationship, but I wish him well. I'm glad he's happy and I'm glad he's doing what he wants to do. But
Mm-hmm.
there's still that little piece of you that wish that had not broken up. But,
Yeah.
God puts us through different relationships with different people at different times. And we don't understand it when that relationship is broken and gone, you know? And
Yep.
it's not, and I understand, Michelle, it's not the same as the way you lost your spouse. And that pain will always going to be totally different because that's your loss. That's your grief. That's your pain that you are dealing with. But thankfully, God has been there with you and helped you with that mindset. And although you're still grieving for him, you took that grief, you turn it around, and you're doing something positive to help other people who have lost spouses, whether it's by suicide or whether it's by cancer or a car accident or a broken relationship, you still find ways to bring those tools together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And being here right now, and or whether you're on Global Grief Network or the conference, or you're doing whatever you're doing on your own and sharing about your book, you are being there to help people. And did that not change who you are?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think when you have any type of a big, trauma or grief or loss, I think we can all grow in self-knowledge and compassion, but when you have something like that that's completely life-shattering, uh, you have a growth spurt.
Yes.
You're forced to really, whether you want it or not, you are forced to reevaluate everything in your life. And I know some people don't, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of people do. And if you ask all of us who work in grief, most everyone, not everyone, but most everyone has had that big life altering event, that big loss that they got through it, and so they want to help others get through.
The light at the tunnel. I
Yeah, I
always
mean,
tell
I
people,
felt like, when I started helping people in grief, and I was able to do that even before I was, a grief educator certified. Before that, I was a wellness coach, so I was using my coaching skills, and I'm also a yoga therapist. I like to learn, and so I was using those skills to help people in grief, and I realized I could. And I think if you have the ability to sit with someone in grief day after day, year after year, that and you can do that, that's why I'm doing it, because I can. And so I feel like I have to, like I'm called to, because
mhm,
it's so needed.
yes, it's a lot more needed than we even thought that could be out there. You just,
Yeah,
because of the millions and millions and billions of people, and some of them don't know where to get help or how to get
yeah,
help or who to go
right.
to, you know. And
Hmm.
the one sad thing that the reason why I became a certified grief coach was because I remember there's a group, it's a national, globally company called um, Compassion Friends, and
Oh
it's,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
familiar
you've
with
heard
them.
of Compassion Friends, and
Absolutely.
oh, so I was attending one of the first meetings, and I remember one of the mothers or grandmothers saying that she was trying to find a grief therapist, and the therapist she found didn't really comprehend that grief that she was dealing with, and she was so frustrated that she couldn't find a grief counselor or a grief therapist. And I was surprised that even when I was going through therapy, that my therapist, I think I was giving her more therapy as a grief coach than she was helping me.
Oh
Because it's
no.
sad that most of them are not certified in grief. They only know the 5 stages and that thing, but they don't know in depth how to deal with people who are really in grief. And
Yeah.
so
That
that's
is
what inspired
actually
me.
one of the things I talk about in my book, is that there are a lot of therapists out there who are not trained in grief.
Exactly.
So when you're looking for a therapist, make sure they have that training,
Yes.
because it might be a great therapist, but if what you're looking for is grief support and they don't have that training, it might not be a good fit.
Yeah, one of the
So
things I've been taught is that therapists are to help people with their past. And we as coaches are to help the people in the present and the future. And,
mhm, mhm.
so, right near where you live is a group called, you might have heard of them, Grief Recovery Method.
Mm-mm.
No, they're in the Portland, Oregon area. That's where I got my certified grief coach. Well, they call it recovery
Oh,
specialist.
oh,
But
okay.
they are there in your area, and you should look them up and go talk to. I think Jonathan is now in charge of it, but his dad and Russell used to be the other founders of it. And they also have books out on loss of spouse and when children grieve and stuff like that. That is really, really helpful. But their certification class, it's like about 32 hours. You go for like Friday through Monday, and it's really, really deep, deep, because you as a coach, we as a coach cannot go and help people if we cannot help ourselves. We first need to go in deep and find out where in us where that grief is coming from and find
Mm-hmm.
a way with
Mm-hmm.
that healing, and it makes it easy to help other people. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, so Michelle, where can we find you? Do you have a website? Stuff like
I
that?
do. I do. The best place to go is my website, which is inhabitjoy.com. And all my socials are on there. My there's a link to my Amazon author page because I have these two books that I talked about earlier, and then I've contributed to three other books, which are also about healing. One of them specifically healing through writing your story. And I have different stories in all of those books, and they're all very supportive and inspirational, motivational. So you can find all of those on my Amazon author page. But all that is it. It's best if you're looking for me, and especially if you want to connect to me. I offer free consultation to anyone. You just have to schedule on my website. So it's inhabitjoy.com.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're on Facebook as well?
I'm on Facebook. I have my Facebook page is Inhabit Joy, my business page, and then I have my personal page, which I really pretty much just use for talking about this kind of stuff, is Michelle
Yeah.
Ann Collins. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have
And
Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel, but I still haven't put much on there yet.
it's a beginning
LinkedIn,
stage.
I'm very busy on LinkedIn. I have a lot on there too.
Yes. I hear that from Tony as well. I'm not so much
Mm-hmm.
into LinkedIn like I am with YouTube and Facebook and maybe Instagram. But um didn't I hear, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you also say at the beginning that you also facilitate groups?
Yeah, I am a volunteer at grief.com. I moderate the one of the grief groups there, usually the spouse loss group.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a volunteer position. I haven't created any of my own grief groups yet because I'm just, one thing at a time. um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes it feels like it's overwhelming, but you'd be surprised. I mean, I have
Hmm.
been doing I usually do my thing on Zoom.
Hmm.
But I Tony was telling me I really needed to get into StreamYard because then that way I can really expand my thing, and I find it to be probably true. And I used to be really tacky when I was younger, but now when you hit this age, you have to relearn everything,
Well,
And
and it's moving so fast. I mean,
yes,
when I was just today trying to figure out StreamYard and how to use it and all that, I asked my techie person she's my virtual assistant who
yes,
does all my posting on Instagram and LinkedIn and the things that are beyond me. I mean, I know how to do the basic posts, but she knows how to make them all pretty. And she's like, "No, I've never heard of StreamYard." I'm like, "Oh
really,
no."
wow,
And she's in her 20s. So I think it's just moving so fast.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had to teach myself all last night. And I said, let's give this a try. Because I usually do it on Zoom and then I convert it and then I edit and then I upload it into YouTube. But now this
Yeah.
is something new. And I think that, praying that God would open my brain and remind me this is not complicated. Don't make it complicated, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to practice before the Global Grief Conference for sure, because
Yes, yeah.
I
Well,
don't
now you
really.
are, because now you have an
Yeah.
idea. Yeah,
Well, I'm on
but
yours, but are we on theirs or are we on our own? I mean, those are all the things I have to figure out.
well, you created your account under your name, so now you are on
Hmm.
StreamYard, so you will be able to get into conference easier, unless you're
Hmm.
going to do a PowerPoint. Just they have to upload it before you get on, so that when you're ready to do your event, you will have your PowerPoint.
There's
So
so many things.
yes, but today I had fun. I created all these different graphics, and it's just like now just learning how to properly put it up, pull it up. So,
Yeah,
but
you're doing great. I'm
it'll get easier.
inspired.
Tony keeps saying it's easy, D. It's easy, D. And I'm like, Tony, I know it's easy. I'm trying to make sure I don't make it complicated. But sometimes when you get to my age, it's not the same when you're in your 20s. So, but I'm so glad you came on, and I would like to hopefully rebook you and have you come back as a guest again, and learn some more from you. And because grief is a teacher, and we keep learning new things. And the nice thing about bringing you on and the other coaches on is that I am learning a lot too. And there are a lot of things that you said earlier that, like, yes, that's true. And you don't think about it until you hear it from somebody else. So, but
Yeah.
I also want to, is your book also on Amazon?
It's on Amazon and all online booksellers, and it's starting to get into bookstores as well. So if you have a favorite outlet, you don't have to get it on Amazon.
Very
Yeah.
good. But is it
Yeah.
coming as a set or individually?
Individually. Yeah.
Oh, but you can buy
You
it
don't
as a
have to
set.
buy both of them. Yeah, you can buy both, or you can buy one or the other.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing you on the Global Grief Conference that's coming up on
Thank
April
you.
28th. What day are you presenting
I'm a
your,
Saturday morning.
oh, you in the morning, mine is in the
I'm in the
afternoon.
morning.
Same
Yeah.
day, Saturday, the 29th. So,
Yeah.
you know, everybody, if who's listening to this, the Global Grief Conference, which is going to be virtually, this is our second annual, it'll be April 28th to the 30th. And Michelle is one of the presenters. And so if you're going to do again on the loss of spouse, right?
Yeah, I'm
So,
going to talk mostly about the things that I go over in my book,
okay.
my
So,
story, and then all the tools that I discovered and used to survive and thrive after losing my partner to suicide.
so if you want to listen to Michelle some more on her workshop at the Global Grief Conference, or you know of some people who are loss of spouse, because I know, Michelle, you're not going to be the only one. I think Jenny's going to do something, and there's a few other. So there's going to be
Mhm.
multiple people who also experienced the loss of spouse, also by suicide, and they're going to be on. So I think our website is going up this next week. This was something that I really told Tony we needed the website. So thankfully, it's going up. It could have been up by now if I did it, but anyway.
Oh, we're still a month out. You guys are
Yeah.
doing great. And Dee,
Yeah,
I
well,
have to say, before we go, I have to say one thing. Going back to your book that you're writing, one is better than two. I publishing two books at once was in my, I mean, it
exhausting.
worked. I got it to work, but I have to recommend not doing that. Just do one.
Yes,
You're
that's what I
making the
was
right
thinking.
choice. Yes, that's the
That's what I
right
was thinking
choice.
is doing one. Originally, I did think about two, and one is a workbook, but then I said,
No,
there's a way
just
you
do
can
what.
combine it. Yes.
Yeah, I did two at once, and my publisher was calling them the twins, and it's it.
The twins. That's a
Yes,
good
my
one.
my twin birth. So yeah, you're doing it the right way.
So if you want to buy Michelle's book, buy the twins. Buy the twins. That way you get more out of it. So, but thank you, Michelle, for being here and being part of us, a part of our podcast. Like I said, I would like to rebook you for the future so we can learn some more
Sure.
from
Yeah, I'd
you.
love it.
And
Thank you, Dee.
it probably won't be to the summer or the fall because I don't want to be too close, especially with the Global Grief Conference coming up. I look forward to hearing your segment at the Global Grief Conference. I will be there for all 3 days to listen, to learn,
Yeah, me too.
support.
It's gonna be so inspiring.
You didn't come and do it last year, did you?
No, I did
No,
not.
okay. Yeah, last year was our first one, and I tell you, it was really a learning experience that we made sure this year we, made some changes. And Tony and I are so excited about it. And it's growing because in the next few years there will be things going on with the Global Grief Conference that is going to be absolutely amazing, and you would see how God had gifted this man with so much. So I look forward to seeing you at the Global Conference and any other time in between. And I thank you for being here as part of the Unplug Grief Ministries podcast.
Thank you, Dee. Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful weekend.
You too?
I hope so. So that was it from Michelle. I'm thankful that you all joined us, and I hope that you learned something from Michelle because I sure did. And the funny thing is, I know many coaches who've lost spouses, and they all have different stories, but they all also all have tools and ways of helping you if you have lost a spouse. So I am closing now. I hope you stay on, and I have a few things coming here at the end that I think will help you and benefit you, and it's being shared to you with love. So have a wonderful, wonderful day. I was supposed to do that. I am going to learn how to do this, so you all just be patient with me.